get our next presenter up right away because we have a great afternoon for you and we have an amazing evening, trust me. Super people here. All right, so this next person that I'm bringing up here, next presenter, he's actually been called, and rightfully so, the world's number what? Small business guru. Now let me ask you a question. How many of you are in some type of business any way, shape, or form, yes? All right, good job. And even if you're not, I think you're gonna get a lot out of this because you'll wanna be after this because this guy is totally inspiring, not just about the business, about life itself. He wrote a book that was my manual for business and literally transformed the way I did business and the way a lot of you do business, and the way I even teach you to do business. His book was called The E-Myth. And he's touched the lives of millions and millions of readers in every industry, all parts of the world. The book's been published in 19, how many? 19 different languages. And it's all about why most small businesses don't work and exactly what to do about it. It's in its 63rd printing now. Over 2 million copies. How many? 2 million copies sold. And it's always on the top 10 list all across the world. Anyways, he is not only a business guru, but I find him to be a spiritual leader and a visionary for the entrepreneurial spirit. What kind of spirit, please? Excellent. He has a new book coming out called eBook Mastery, and it's the 7 essential disciplines for building a world-class company. And literally, this book's already on the number 4 on the bestseller list. So, it is my honor and my pleasure to be able to introduce you a revolutionary and evolutionary master in the field, the one, the only, right here at Seminar of the Century, Mr. Michael Gerber! Want that?
Hello, 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 hello. Good afternoon. Are you hungry? Okay, okay. Okay. All right, well, I just turned 71. Harv told me to come casual, so I left my tie in the room. And I don't usually do this. I speak around the world, but I have never done anything quite like this. Except one time. And that was at Jack Canfield's event in Las Vegas. And I told everybody there the very same thing, that I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not here to jack you up. I'm here to wake you up, to understand why it is that so many millions of people go into business for themselves and end up sucking wind. Big time, bad time, and it's a huge, huge tragedy. Do you know that according to the Kauffman Foundation, we just read a recent report, and they're the foundation focused on entrepreneurship worldwide. They're the largest foundation of their kind. The Kauffman Foundation just completed some research on new businesses in the United States, and they say that there are 450,000 new businesses started in this country every month. Hear me, I declare it here to every single one of you, this is the age of the new entrepreneur. Over the next 200 years, a miracle is going to happen. The question is whether or not you actively engage in it or sit by and watch as it occurs alongside of you. Entrepreneurs are transforming the world. The Google boys started in their garage. Bill Gates started in his garage. Every single extraordinary company you have ever heard of started in somebody's garage, if not their own. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a garage? What are you doing in it? It's time to start a revolution. I decided a year ago, about a year and 3 months ago, actually December 2005, to take a leap into a completely new world. Since 1977, when I founded my first company, eMyth Worldwide, to transform the state of small business worldwide, to create the McDonald's of small business consulting, to transform the lives of anybody and everybody who decided they were going to go out on their own to make a living in a business of their own, to create a turnkey consulting system that everybody told me I was crazy to even imagine I could do. In 1977, I founded what is today the largest single small business development firm in the world. I was 41 years old. I was 41 years old when I started a revolution. I knew nothing about business when I started. So hear me, whether you know anything about business or don't know anything about business is irrelevant. The question is, what is your dream? Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream." When was the last time you said that about a condition in the world? Martin Luther didn't say, "I have a dream, I want to go to Hawaii." Martin Luther King didn't say, "I have a dream, I want to buy a Ferrari." Martin Luther King didn't say, "I have a dream, I want to find another wife." Martin Luther King didn't say, "I have a personal dream." Martin Luther King's dream was about changing the world. How many of you are up for that opportunity to transform the world? Please tell me whether or not you want to do that. I'm going to do that here. Now that might sound presumptuous. I didn't go to the moon. But the moon is right here in front of every single one of you. What's your moon? What's your dream? What's your vision? What's your purpose? What's your mission? What is happening out there in the world that is unacceptable to you? What is happening everywhere one looks that is completely unacceptable to you? I have a dream to transform small business worldwide. I have a vision to create a turnkey system that will enable every single person who wants to start a company, every single person who wants to awaken the entrepreneur within to be able to do it without heavy financing, without all of the things everybody says you need, without a business plan, without a marketing plan, without a computer, without the internet, without anything and everything everybody will tell you is absolutely essential to create a successful company. I didn't have anything when I started. I had a dream. The entrepreneur's dream is not a personal dream. The entrepreneur's dream is an impersonal dream. The entrepreneur's dream is not about me, it's about them. It's an extraordinary entrepreneur who won the Nobel Peace Prize last year. His name is Muhammad Yunus. How many of you have heard of Muhammad Yunus? Well, every single one of you should know the man. Every single one of you should know what he has done. Every single one of you should understand the power of extreme vision, what it means to awaken the entrepreneur within, what it means to awaken the spirit within, what it means to awaken the soul within, what it means to take off the blinders and look at the world and see what's missing in this picture, and to see, in fact, what is called upon for you and me and every single person who says, enough, it's got to be different. I'm going to do that. Guess how you do that? Nobody would believe this to be true, but this is the age of the new entrepreneur. Every single person in this area, every single person within the sound of my voice has an entrepreneur within. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. It is time to wake up. Who? The creator, the visionary, the Imagineer, as Walt Disney would say. And when I speak about business like this, people ask me or think about it and say, what in the world do you get so passionate about? How could a business get you so excited? Let me tell you why a business gets me so excited. When I started E-Myth Worldwide in 1977, I told you I hadn't a clue. I hadn't a clue about business. A friend of mine asked me to go with him to one of his clients. My friend owned a small ad agency in Silicon Valley. He said, I want you to come to me and meet Bob, the CEO, the president, the founder of this small startup company in Silicon Valley. He's got a problem. He can't convert the leads we generate for him into sales. I said, Ace, that's his name. What in the world am I going to tell Bob? I don't know anything about business. And I certainly don't know anything about high tech. And Ace said, trust me, you know more than you think you do. And the reason Ace said that, this most unlikely thing, is because I had sold encyclopedias successfully. Nobody sells encyclopedias successfully. And nobody spends as much time as I spent selling encyclopedias successfully. What Ace didn't realize is that I sold encyclopedias successfully because I was accustomed to studying with a master. And the master who taught me the mastery was the sales manager who recruited me as a young guy to go out in the street knocking on doors and say, hi, you don't know me, but you will. And I said, but I don't know how to do that. And he said, of course you don't. And that's what's so remarkable about it. You don't need to know anything about it, because I'm going to teach you every little thing you know. Anybody here want to sell encyclopedias? Yeah. Wake up. Does anybody here want to sell encyclopedias? Of course not. He said, just do what I say. Now, I'd heard that before because my first master taught me how to play the saxophone. And when my mother and father and I went to Hollywood to meet with Merle Johnston, who was referred to us by my first saxophone teacher in New Jersey, where we came from. This is way, way, way back. We went to Merle's studio, and my mom stood here, and my dad stood there, and I stood in the middle. And I was 12 years old. And Merle came out. He's about 4'8" and about 400 pounds, bright red face. And he looked at me and he said, you must be Mikey. And he said it in such a derogatory way. And I just sort of nodded, and he said, and you must be Mrs. Gerber, and you must be Mr. Gerber. He said, you come with me, and you two stay here. I liked him from the very first moment. I had never heard anybody talk to my parents that way. It was about time. Took me in the back, which is where the students learned how to play the saxophone. He said, take out your horn, and I took out my horn, and he said, play this, and I started to play that. We must have done that for about 2 minutes. He said, put your horn away, and let's go back out in front. Went back out in front, stood in between my mother and my father again, and Merle said, I'll take Mikey, and teach them how to play the saxophone, but there's some rules for the game. Are you with me? There's some rules for the game. He said, first of all, this happened exactly as I'm describing it. I will never forget it. He said, first of all, I only teach people who want to become the best saxophone players in the world. And that's what I do. And if you doubt that, go back to Al Chesner, who brought you here, and ask him about all the people I've taught. I only teach people who want to become the best saxophone players in the world, Merle said. And he said there's only several ways one can do that. And he looked at me and said, first of all, you got to practice. You got to practice exactly what I tell you, exactly how I tell you, and exactly how much I tell you, and you've got to practice 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. And he repeated it again. I only teach people who want to become the best saxophone players in the world. Didn't ask me if I wanted to, just told me what he does. These are the rules of the game. So he said, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Now, the second little problem, he said, is this is the last time I expect to see either one of you. And he pointed to my mother and my father. If little Mikey is going to get here, he's going to have to get here on a bus, and he's going to have to transfer 3 times from Anaheim, which is where we lived. And if you check out where he's going to have to transfer, if he were my kid, I wouldn't let him come alone. So please say no. He said, because I don't even like kids. I was 12 years old. And he said, finally, should you decide little Mikey is going to study with me, should little Mikey actually keep his promise to practice 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, he said, what's going to happen is he's going to start to complain to you. And he said, don't call. Everything he's going to say is true. I only teach people who want to become the best saxophone players in the world. And I don't care how old he is. This is between him and me. And then he looked at me and he said, so what do you think? And I don't know what possessed me, but I said, yeah. And we shook on it and we left. But understand, he didn't know why I was so willing to say yes. First of all, I knew he didn't mean any of it. Understand, I knew he wouldn't remember. I knew my parents wouldn't remember. I knew parents and older people lie. It was simply that. I also knew if it took somebody else 3 hours a day to do, I could do it in about 15 minutes because I was just a natural. So I figured this was a breeze. I get to go to Hollywood, California every Saturday morning for a saxophone lesson with a guy who teaches the best saxophone players in the world, and it would be a piece of cake. So my first week, I practiced maybe 3 hours, period. And Saturday came. And I went to Hollywood, California, and to Merle's studio. And I sat down outside and waited for him. And then he called me in. And I put the music book, the Close book, up on the music stand, just like that one. And I started to play. And about a minute went by, maybe 2. And he said, stop. Put away your horn. What did I say to you? I said 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. You didn't even come close. That's 1. There is no 2. Go home, do what I say, and come back here next Saturday if you are ready to become one of the best saxophone players in the world. Because you could be, but you won't. Well, I left about 55 minutes early. Got on the bus, went home, and then I had a decision to make. Now, you might think the decision was, am I willing to practice 3 hours a day? And the fact of the matter is that wasn't the decision at all. The real question was, do I want to become one of the best saxophone players in the world? And if I made that commitment to become one of the best saxophone players in the world, and if I was going to entrust Merle to become my saxophone master, then I had to do exactly what he said in exactly the way he said it. Otherwise, I was through. For whatever reason possessed me, I stayed with Merle for the next 9 years. My second master said identically the same thing to me. He said, if you're going to become a master at this, he didn't know Merle. Merle didn't know him. If you're going to become a master at this, you're going to have to do this exactly like I tell you. Not like that, but like this. Memorize the script and go down the street exactly the way I say it and say exactly what I say to exactly who shows up, and something miraculous is going to happen. Merle said to me, Michael, you don't make music. Music shows up. My saxophone, my sales manager master said, Michael, you don't make a sale. The sale shows up. And it shows up when you do exactly what you're called to do in exactly the way you're called to do it. No, not like this, like that. Just do it. And I did. So now I had two masters who taught me two different things, but each of them taught me in exactly the same way, and in each case, I mastered exactly what I was there to master. Well, after a little while selling encyclopedias, I was tired of working with my mouth, so I thought I'd work with my hands, and I became a carpenter in Southern California. Now, understand, by that time, I was in my mid-30s. And I knew nothing about carpentry. I didn't even know how to swing a hammer. I was an absolutely rabid romantic. I honestly thought that working with my hands had more meaning than working with my mouth. So I simply showed up on the job, the first job I could convince somebody to take me to do, and they fired me in about 12 minutes. And I showed up on the next job, and they fired me in about 13 minutes. But every time I showed up on a carpentry job, I learned by watching what somebody else did. And then I did the next one, then I did the next one, and then I actually stayed for over 3 years, and they assigned me to this man who was a carpenter master. And lo and behold, the guy said exactly what everybody else had told me. Don't do it that way, do it this way. Don't do it that way, do it this way. Do exactly what I tell you, exactly how I tell you, and you'll be able to master this too. And lo and behold, I did. And then Ace took me to visit his Silicon... Are you still with me? Took me to visit his Silicon Valley chief executive officer, founder, president of this startup high-tech company in the middle of where all this stuff was going on. And Ace took me in and he introduced me to Bob. And he said to Bob and he said to me, Bob, this is Michael. Michael, this is Bob. Look, why don't you two guys get to know each other? I'm going to take off for an hour. I'll be back and I'll pick Michael up. Now, I knew something, first of all, that I didn't know anything about business. And I knew something else. Because Bob owned a business, I knew he did. So these are two assumptions I had when I sat down with Bob, the high-tech wizard in Silicon Valley, because Ace asked me to get to understand his problem, which was he couldn't convert leads into sales. So Bob said to me after we sat there uncomfortably for a couple of minutes, so Michael, what do you know about my business? And I said, nothing, Bob. He looked a little disgruntled. He said, well, what do you know about our products? And I said, less than that, Bob. And he said, Michael, if you don't know anything about my business and you don't know anything about our product, how in the hell can you help me? And I said, I haven't a clue, Bob. Ace thinks I can. You like Ace. I like Ace. Let's see what happens. We've got an hour to kill. Now, understand, I didn't know this. But my life was to be transformed in that moment. Hear me. My life was about to be transformed. It was so unbelievable that what did happen could happen. If you had been me, knowing as little as I knew, other than I actually had been taught by 3 extraordinary masters how to do 3 completely inconsistent, incongruous things: playing the saxophone, selling encyclopedias, and framing a house. What lessons have you missed when you suddenly miss the pattern that's revealing itself in your life? The entrepreneur within sees the pattern. The technician within sees the work. The manager within just gets pissed off. So I started my meeting with Bob and began to ask him questions, the only thing I could do. And I swear over that hour, a transformation took place. Didn't know anything, but I discovered Bob knew less. He owned a business. I didn't. What I knew was selling as a system. I'd learned that selling encyclopedias. You might say to me, what in the world does selling encyclopedias have to do with selling high-tech whatever? You have no idea how similar they are. They're exactly the same thing. So when we got done with our meeting, and when I suddenly realized that Bob really had a problem, that Bob really didn't understand, and that Bob was the biggest single opportunity I had ever faced in my life, Bob said, "Can you help me?" And I said, hear this, of course I can. How did I know that? How did I know that? Understand, for years I'd been what my mother called a wandering Jew. Was a wandering Jew looking for my passion, looking for my purpose. I was a saxophone player, I was a hippie, I was a beatnik, I was a this, I was a that. I did everything and I did nothing, and I was continually searching for this magic holy grail that was going to suddenly reveal itself, but never did. Not this, not that, not this, not that. Even after 12 years of mastering the saxophone, I suddenly came face to face with the fact I didn't want to be a musician. I'm a late learner. And that's cool, because I felt it. And when you feel it, something is speaking to you. A perfect stranger is speaking to you. And in my case, it was the entrepreneur who woke up big time in Bob's office when I suddenly saw the biggest single opportunity I'd ever seen in my life. And it came to me in that moment when both of my assumptions were turned on their ear. He owns a business, but he doesn't know anything about business, and he doesn't know what I do, and I've never been in business. He's never had a master. He couldn't have. He's never learned the fundamental lessons that are so critical to doing anything anybody wishes to do. And so I started to help Bob, and he was my first client, and then my second, and then my fifth, and then my ninth, and I suddenly came face to face with the reality that Bob wasn't the only one who had this problem. Every single small business I walked into had identically the same problem. Bob never even imagined he could successfully sell what he needed to sell by creating a turnkey system to sell it. I showed him he was wrong. Bob thought he needed sales engineers to sell his product, people who really know the product, and I demonstrated to him it's exactly the opposite of what he needed. He simply needed someone who was willing to master the system. What system? The system we created. Out of what? Out of our entrepreneurial imagination. Out of the Imagineer that woke up in me and began to ask the essential questions that nobody seemed to be asking everywhere I went. It was astonishing to me, ladies and gentlemen. Astonishing to me. First I was this, and now I'm that. How in the hell does that happen? You have to be available. Are you available? Is anybody in this great, great outdoor sanctuary available? If I never see you again, what I'm going to share with you in this limited time I have is not a secret. It is so obvious for anybody who looks and is open to see. And it's so tragic that so many people own a small business. Doing it, busy, beating their brains out day after day, never, ever going to realize the Holy Grail, the magic on the hill, or anything even like it. It's just a job, the worst job in the world, because you're working for a lunatic. Please don't take this personally. Created a turnkey system for Bob, and then Jerry, and then Mary, and then Smitty, and then Judy, and then this one, and then that one. And even when I did that, suddenly we came to the realization that not only didn't they know that selling is a system, but they didn't realize that management is a system. They didn't even know that marketing is a system. They didn't know that anything was a system because they didn't think systemically. The universe is a system, ladies and gentlemen. You come face to face with the reality that everything is connected, and if you do this, that changes, and that changes, and that changes. Everything is changed by one decision. Your life is a universe. And what does that mean? And why is that important? Because nobody can be free until they realize that. Because nobody can be free until they come face to face with that. Because nobody can transform his or her life, let alone his or her company, until he transcends his life, her company. The entire reality is it just happens like that, and you suddenly see it because every bit of you is awake and alive to it, because you're seizing a day that everybody else is asleep to. As I went from client 1 to client 2 to client 3 to client 4, Ace's company grew. We began to discover the truth about business, which wasn't a secret. It isn't a secret. It's the most amazing thing to see, however, because it's facing you everywhere you look. I suddenly realized that what had happened in all of these small businesses had been like the owner of the business, the founder of the company. How many of you own your own business? The owner of the business, the founder of the company, wasn't an entrepreneur at all. What I've come to call a technician suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure. Made the fatal assumption, because I understand how to cook, I understand how to run a business that cooks. If I understand how to be an accountant, I understand how to build a business that does accounting. If I understand how to fix a car, I understand how to build a business that fixes cars. And it's 180 degrees from the truth. Knowing how to do the work of a business has nothing to do with building a business that works. And the technician suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure builds the business around him or her. I am my business, they say proudly. And I look at them and say, what a tragedy that you'd believe that to be true. At E-Myth Worldwide, which I founded in 1977, we built a turnkey system to transform any small business. Build a turnkey system to transform any small business into a thing of beauty. Since I founded the company not knowing how to do what to do, I simply pursued it with the kind of passion that I pursued everything in my life. But I suddenly realized the power of it. The power of it was that we could transform the lives of millions upon millions upon millions of people who own and operate businesses around the world. As I told you also, eMyth Today, with its eMyth Mastery program, its ability to truly transform any business in this room, no matter whether it's high-tech, low-tech, no-tech, doesn't make any difference. No matter where you are, no matter what you sell, no matter what you do, no matter how you do it, what we discovered are there universal truths about business that apply to every single kind of business. Everybody told me I was nuts. Everybody told me you can't do that. Everybody told me that's impossible. Everybody told me every business is different. Everybody told me every market is different. Everybody told me every product is different. Everybody told me every service is different. And the truth was, I knew they were wrong. I don't know how I knew, but I don't need to know how I knew, because it came to me and I trusted it. I trusted what I heard him say. Today, eMyth is serving clients in 145 countries around the world. Over 66,000 small business clients have transformed their lives. And I started it not knowing anything about anything other than what my masters taught me. No, not that way, this way. No, not that way, this way. And trust your intuition. Trust it. Trust your passion. Trust that part of you that is singing this extraordinary song that says, holy shit! Can I believe that? And so we did it. Step by step by step by step. We went to work on the company, not in the company. I didn't start the company to become a coach. We weren't in business for 2 years before I stopped working with clients entirely. We built a coaching system that novice coaches were trained to use, just like my masters taught me. No, not that way, this way. No, not this way, that way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all at the cost of a minimum wage kid. There was nobody who owned a business who could say, I can't afford what you do. Nobody. That was the point of it. Accessible. You can't do that, everybody said. I'm here to stand as a testimony to the fact that not only can you, but we did. And we've been teaching countless thousands of small business owners through our programs and countless millions through my books and tapes and seminars and so forth and so on to do exactly what I'm sharing with you here. And I came face to face with what was missing in all those small businesses, which is what turned the key. It was like every single one of those small business owners, before I started my company, had gone out and bought a jigsaw puzzle. And everybody here knows what's on the cover of a jigsaw puzzle box. What is that? The picture of the finished puzzle. And it was like every single owner of every business I walked into had bought the box, opened it up, spilled all the pieces on the floor and thrown away the cover. There was no vision of what the business was going to look like when it was finally done. Please hear this. There was no picture in their mind of their exit strategy. There was no picture of what the company was going to look like, act like, feel like, be like when it was finally done. There was no clear, perfect picture of the result. There was no great idea in any of those small businesses. They're just people who preferred to work for themselves rather than for somebody else. Doing it, busy, beating their brains out, trying to get the job done. There was no soul in those businesses. There was no spirit in those companies. There was no passion for a result that would blow people's minds when they saw it. There was no brand of business. Do you understand, when we stand here in this seminar of the century, You're a testimonial to the fact of what I'm speaking about. Understand, the people who attracted you here, the company that attracted you to this event, have exactly what's missing in every single small business I've walked into for years and years and years and years. A brand, differentiation, a key personality, a way of looking at the world, a way of communicating it, a way of touching the hearts and minds of tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of people. Most people in small business would not even imagine putting on something like this. Think about it. When was the last time you put on something like this? And how come you wouldn't even dream of putting on something like this? Because there is no dream, there is no vision, there is no purpose, and there is no mission. Please don't take this personally. Just listen to me. I'm not beating you up, I'm waking you up. No small business needs to stay small. And no technician suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure will ever create a great company. And so what do they do instead? They go to work every day. They go to work every day. They open the doors, they close the doors, they clean the floors. They go to the bank, they hire somebody, they fire somebody. They solve problems, they solve problems, they solve problems. Anybody here solve problems every day? Do the problems go away? No. Why? Because problems don't go away ever, ever, ever without a dream, without a vision, without a purpose, without a mission. Please hear me. What I found missing in all those companies and what supported us in our odyssey in attempting to solve the problems of small business worldwide once and for all without knowing anything about how to do it was to pursue the question. To pursue the question. Please write this down. What's the question? What's the question? What's the question? Please say it. Please say it again. Good. It's not a question of what's the answer. The answer is irrelevant. It's what's the question. Discover the question, and you'll discover the meaning of life. Now you think, sitting here, how presumptuous it would be from a 70-year-old, 71-year-old guy in a white suit saying to you in the most improbable way that the secret of life comes with a question. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And until that question lives within everything you do, nothing will make any difference, because all you'll discover are more problems, more problems, more problems, more problems. I'm here to say that your company, the business you started, is the most significant opportunity of your life, provided you see it. Provided you see it the way it is. So fast forward, invented E-Myth worldwide, wrote my first book, The E-Myth, Why Most Small Businesses Don't Work and What to Do About It. It was published in 1986, started the company in 1977. The book was an accident. The guy was sitting listening to a seminar I was doing called Key Frustrations in a Small and Growing Business and What to Do About Them. He came up to me afterward and he said, would you like to write a book? And I said, sure. About what? He said, the seminar. I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. He said, well, let me go back to the publisher and see if we can do the deal. Came back, he said, we did the deal. They gave me an advance on this little book. I'd never written a book. And I wrote it in 90 days. It was published 6 months later. And today, it's one of the top 5 most successful books on business in the world. How many of you read the E-Myth? Okay. Please, how many of you have not read the E-Myth? Oh, tragedy. I go around the world and I speak, and people come up to me constantly saying, Michael, I just got to say this to you, just got to say this. And they all say the same thing. They look at me square in my face, and they said, Michael, you have changed my life. And I said, and how did I do that? I read your book. Now hear me, it's not me. Do you understand? It just happened. I read your book. And always, this is what they say. Now, this is going to sound absolutely absurd, but they say, I have two favorite books, almost always. One is the Bible, and the second is your book. Now, they say that. You'll forgive me for... They say that. Now, why in the world do they feel that way? Because literally, by changing the way they think, everything they did became different. And the way I taught them to think was this. Just like my saxophone teacher told me, just like my carpenter told me, just like my sales manager told me. They didn't say it exactly like this, but this is what I learned. Go to work on your business, not in your business. Go to work on your life, not in your life. Transcend it, and then you can see it. If you can't transcend it, you will always be it. And if you are it, you're lost. If you are your company, you're lost. If you are your job, you're lost. If you are your career, you're lost. Extraordinary master taught me that lesson. The man's name was Gerber. Anybody heard of Gerber? Please raise your hands if you've heard of Gerber. It's amazing so few people have heard of Gerber. Anybody here heard of the work? Raise your hands if you've heard of the work. I'm not accustomed to doing this. I don't usually get intimate with the audience. You understand? I don't usually ask questions, but I'm asking a question. How many of you heard of the work? Please raise your hands. Oh my God. Go to work on it, not in it. Let me tell you a little story. When I was among those 12 clients in the very, very beginning, and was beginning to get so frustrated because I'd walk into these little businesses and they're in total chaos. There's no order. I went from one business to another business and stopped on the way at McDonald's. Now, it tells you something about me. I had an epiphany, a life-transforming epiphany in that moment that I walked into McDonald's. I suddenly saw what was missing in every one of those businesses. I saw the product of Ray Kroc's imagination. Ray Kroc was the founder of McDonald's, but he didn't found it, he found it. Ray Kroc was a peddler of malted milk machines, multi-mixer malted milk machines, and he went to the McDonald brothers to sell them a multi-mixer malted milk machine. And he walked into McDonald's in San Bernardino, and his mind was blown. He couldn't believe his eyes. He was so taken by what he saw that he set about convincing the McDonald brothers to give him the franchise rights to McDonald's. And they did. And they gave him the franchise rights to McDonald's because they knew they weren't worth anything. Because I'd already tried to franchise McDonald's and failed. Please write this down. Experience is the worst teacher in the world. It tells you what you think you know, but it doesn't tell you what you don't know. And what the McDonald brothers didn't know, Ray Kroc did. And he had none of their experience. He saw it instantly. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. They gave him the franchise rights. He walked back to Des Plaines, Illinois, borrowed the money to start his first store. Now, whatever you think about McDonald's, I think you'd have to agree it's a relatively successful company. Ray Kroc went back, borrowed the money to start his first store, what he called his franchise prototype. But Ray Kroc didn't do what every single small business owner right here in this field did when you started your business. Ray Kroc didn't work in McDonald's. He didn't go to work in McDonald's. He didn't make a French fry, didn't make a molded, didn't make anything, whatever. Didn't do the work in the business. He hired people to do the work in the business because that wasn't his job. Ray Kroc went to work on the franchise prototype of McDonald's to perfect the system. The core operating system of that exquisite company that he set out in his mind and his imagination to do something nobody had ever set out to do before. Ray Kroc said, I'm going to create the most successful small business in the world. And by saying I'm going to create the most successful small business in the world, what Ray Kroc was saying, the little sucker is going to work perfectly, absolutely perfectly every single time. Does your business work perfectly every single time? No. But it could. If you did what Ray Kroc did, if you saw what Ray Kroc saw, if you imagined what Ray Kroc imagined. He built the perfect little franchise prototype. And then he got ready to franchise it. The franchisee would walk in the door and they'd want to see it and he'd say, not yet, let me tell you a story. Please write that down. Let me tell you a story. What's your story? Let me tell you a story. What's your story? The job of the entrepreneur is to tell a story. What story? The story of the vision, the story of the dream, the story of the mission, the story of the purpose, the story that differentiates my company from every other company in the world. The story that creates a brand. The story that's the heart of the soul of the spirit of this company. Just like the founder of Starbucks did, just like the founder of Walmart did, just like the founder of Mrs. Fields Cookies did, just like the founder of every extraordinary entrepreneurial company ever did. Let me tell you a story, let me tell you a story. Hear this, you don't know your story, you can't grow your company. Without a story, there is no magic to it. The franchisee would listen to the story, and Ray Kroc would regale him with the fact that there are going to be 30,000 stores when we're done. They're going to be in every country worldwide. The man was already, by that time, 58 years old. What's your problem? You understand, here's this guy telling this story that would exhaust most people even to think about. You're going to do what? Everybody always says to a rabid entrepreneur, you're going to do what? That's impossible. And he only smiled. And then he said, so let me show you the secret. Took them into McDonald's and showed them the perfection of the system. Show them kids producing results their parents couldn't get them to produce at home. But show them a little miracle. And they would say yes. And he'd say not yet. First you got to go to Hamburger U. Hamburger U? What the hell is that? That's where you learn how to run the system. The system is the solution, Ray Kroc said. The system is the thing that makes it work. The system is the thing that makes it possible for us to predict exactly what it's going to look like when it gets to the very end. The system is what makes it possible for us to make a promise to a customer who comes in the door. The system is what makes a Big Mac a Big Mac. The system is what makes our fries, and nobody else's fries. How do you do that? I'm not talking about business. I'm talking about a point of view. I'm talking about mastery, as mastery reveals itself in every single thing a human being does or doesn't. I'm talking about being able to see the pattern. I'm talking about having this extraordinary ability to see the whole, the entirety of it. each and every single part, each and every single personal part, and the way they interface with every other single personal part, the way the pieces come together, to create, this is my company, this is our company, this is your company, this is McDonald's, this is the only company of its kind in the world, and it's selling a hamburger, French fries, a milkshake, and everybody else is too. How do you turn a commodity into an exquisite brand? All these are questions that came to me as I'm looking for the Holy Grail and trying to discover what it took to be able to teach anybody who's already committed himself, his family, her family, to creating a small business, hopefully to make it work so they wouldn't have to go back and start a job all over again. All the questions. How do people do that? How did he do that? How did he even think to do that? How did he even imagine it could be done when everybody was telling him it couldn't be? How do you? So the story began to unfold, and it began to speak. It began to tell the story of how Ray Kroc did what Ray Kroc did. And he used Ray Kroc as the icon for every small business owner, whether it be a plumber or an electrician, whether it be a bakery, whether it be a coffee shop, whether it be an accountant or a bookkeeper or a mathematician, whether it be a seminar speaker or a consultant, didn't make any difference. It didn't make any difference because the system is the solution. Just like Ray Kroc said, he said it, he did it, he proved it, he validated it, and every extraordinarily successful company in the world has done identically the same thing, and everybody else hasn't. How does a guy open up a coffee shop and call it Starbucks? For God's sakes, and you pay 10 times how much you'd pay for a cup of coffee any place else. Are you out of your minds? And you stand in line, 20 people in line, just waiting to say venti, grande, tall. Where the hell did they get that language? You want a big one, you want a small one. I can't even get tall and small in the same box. I didn't know how he came up with that. What words do you use to describe what you do? What's your story? And so E-Myth became this miraculous thing. Well, the truth is, at a certain point in my life in E-Myth, I began to feel like I needed something else. At the age of 68, we recruited and hired a CEO to run the company and to grow it. And he brought in his own management team, and I, the chairman of the board, I'm still the chairman of the board and the founder of the company, major shareholder of the company, but I'm standing on the outside now, not on the inside. So suddenly I'm on the outside of my own company, not on the inside of my own company, and suddenly I need something to do. Well, what the hell does somebody at 68 years old do? Start another company. What, are you out of your mind? You could relax, you could play golf. I don't play golf. I mean, you could just do something, but you start another company? Are you crazy, Michael? That's what people said. Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I said, there's something missing at E-Myth, and I want to discover what it is. And I had a long conversation with my mother, who on this day is 96 years old. I've been trying to get her to start a new business, but she said no. We were talking and talking and talking. I was telling her about all the stuff that's going on in my head. She says, Michael, it's just obvious to me what you got to do is you got to create something new. When I walked out of my mother's house, after she said you got to create something new, an idea came to me. And the idea actually was something that had been sitting there for a long time. My brother-in-law, by the name of Marty Sklar, who was a vice chairman of Disney Imagineering, just retired, told me a story about Walt Disney. Of course, Walt Disney is one of the greatest entrepreneurs who ever lived. He said Walt was in a meeting one day and was getting really frustrated. And Walt did get really frustrated with lesser minds and lesser people. I mean, you understand, he was always driven crazy because nobody could see what he saw. Has anybody ever suffered from that? Why is it they can't see this? Well, he essentially asked everybody to leave and said, when you come back tomorrow morning to the meeting, it's not going to be a meeting like anything we've ever done before. Be prepared for something new. And they went away, and they came back the next morning, and on the door of the meeting room was a sign, and it said, "Welcome to the dreaming room." They'd never seen that before. They walked in, and everybody sat down. Walt didn't say a word. Everybody congregated, and then Walt started the meeting. He said, "You obviously saw the sign on the door. This is no longer a meeting room, a conference room. This is the dreaming room." And he said, befitting of that name, you are no longer who you thought you were. You are now Disney Imagineers. And he said, what we do in the dreaming room is to pursue the impossible. Hear me, pursue the impossible. Not fix anything, not make anything right, but pursue the impossible. Which means we can't get there from here. Which means nothing you believe you know to be true is relevant to what we're about to do, which is impossible. Which means we can't even conceive of it until it comes to us. Like in a flash of light, like every amazing thing that's come to me, Walt said, has come like in a flash of light. And he said again, welcome to the dreaming room. Let's get busy. Of course, their focus was Disneyland. And nothing like Disneyland had ever been created before. And even when Walt came back to his brother, Roy Disney, and said, "Roy, you'll not believe what we're about to do." And Roy, of course, being accustomed to not believing what we're about to do, because that's what Walt always came back with, what we're about to do, you won't believe it. And Roy said, "I probably won't." And he said, "We're going to create Disneyland." And Roy said, "What in the hell is that?" He said, "Nothing like we've ever seen before." He said, "I just took my nephews to an amusement park, and I was offended at the way the people dressed, at the way the rides looked. I couldn't even imagine anybody going there and taking children there. It was an unholy experience. We're going to create exactly the opposite of that. I've never seen it. You've never seen it. We've never done it. Nobody's ever done it. And that's exactly what appeals to me, just like Fantasia did. Always the first. Always the first. What are you the first to do? Please write that down. What are you the first to do? What am I the first to do? What's my dreaming room? What's my pursuit of the impossible? What am I here to create that's going to transform the world in this age of the new entrepreneur, which is really a revolution? Do you understand? Institutions aren't going to change the world. The church isn't going to change the world. The synagogue isn't going to change the world. The government isn't going to change the world. The job isn't going to change the world. The entrepreneur is going to change the world, just like the entrepreneur has always done. But now, hear me, but now with an extreme difference. I said it, I called it, the new entrepreneur. Who is the new entrepreneur? The new entrepreneur is not interested in simply creating an ordinary business. The new entrepreneur, Muhammad Yunus, the creator of Grameen Bank, who has transformed the lives of over 7 million starving women in countries in which they don't stand a chance to live, impoverished not. He said there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. And he created micro-lending. And his micro-lending has transformed the lives of millions of women and soon to be hundreds of millions of impoverished people across the earth. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for it. He is an entrepreneur. He's an entrepreneur of the new age, of the new entrepreneur, the entrepreneur I'm talking about, to create a company of meaning. Please write this question down, every single one of you who raised your hands, you own a business. What's the meaning of my business? What's the meaning of my life? What's the meaning of my business? And how is the meaning of my life and the meaning of my business connected to produce a revolution in the world? What is it I'm here to create? And so I began the creation of a new company. And I held my first dreaming room in December 2005, 8th, 9th, and 10th. I had 35 people come to that dreaming room at $3,000 each. And each and every one of them said, so what am I going to get in the dreaming room? And I said, I hadn't a clue. What you're going to get is me. And I'm probably going to piss you all off. What you're going to get is a blank piece of paper and beginner's mind. We're going to get rid of old co. We're going to get rid of all of the past. We're going to get rid of everything you believe in. We're going to get rid of every place you're stuck. And we're going to start with an open question. Who am I? And where am I going? What's my dream? What's my vision? What's my purpose? What's my mission? What matters to me? What matters to you? And I walked into that dreaming room just like everyone else. I walked in without any idea of what was going to happen. I'd never done it before. I don't do that. I don't do personal growth. That makes me obviously very strange among you. I said at the very beginning, this is not personal growth. This is beyond personal growth. This is not about you at all. It's about the world. It's about meaning. It's about suffering out there in the world. It's about every single opportunity. It sits right there, just like Muhammad Yunus saw when he stood outside of the university where he's teaching economics in Bangladesh, and thousands upon tens of thousands of people were coming in from the villages to die in the streets. Truly, die in the streets. And he'd walk out and he'd see them, and he said in his book, Banker to the Poor, get that book, it's not here, Banker to the Poor, write it down. He said, you know, it just struck me. You can't really tell when a person's close to death and dead. They look about the same. He said, something has to be done. And he reached into his pocket and loaned $17 in Bangladesh money to the first woman he saw when he walked out of his classroom. He said, I'm teaching economics, and this puts the lie to it. How could we be living here in this day and age and having millions of people dying on the streets? How is that possible? And he loaned her $17, no collateral. He said, go and make a basket. And she did, and pay me back. And she did. And 98% of the women he has loaned money to have paid him back. No collateral, no bank, nothing like anybody has ever seen before. What's your problem? Because I discovered working with all these little businesses that there was no passion, there was no meaning, there was no purpose other than getting by. There was no life, no vitality, no spirit. It was just doing it. To do what? To work through my days. There's got to be something else in life. There's got to be something else in life. There's got to be something else in creating something that creates an economy in which people can learn to flourish. So I started out in the path in December of 2005 with my first dreaming room, and I've now done 24 of them. I'm extending an invitation to every single one of you here. Harv told me that you're the most passionate people he's ever known. I took him at his word. I'm going to extend a special invitation to everybody here to sign up in the age of the new entrepreneur, to become a revolutionary, to join me, to do something nobody else has conceived of doing. Now, I already know I don't have to know how to do that. I already know you don't have to know how to do that. I already know it just comes to me. And I already know it's going to come to you, because dreaming room after dreaming room after dreaming room after dreaming room, people's lives are transformed. But they do what the transformation speaks to them about. They just don't dream about it. Because dreaming, as I'm describing it, has nothing to do with the dreaming that you might do when you're asleep. This is intentional dreaming I'm talking about. It's what Muhammad Yunus did when he loaned her $17, and then another, and another, and another. He could see poverty eradicated around the world. And his dream is that by 2050, there is no reason that there will ever be, again, poverty. Can you imagine and actually pulling that off? Think about it. Gandhi said, I have a dream. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. Muhammad Yunus said, I have a dream, and he says it to this day. Every extraordinary inventor of the impossible that pursues it with the passion to be able to see something nobody else can see. That's what I'm looking for. I need thousands of people to awaken the entrepreneur around the world. To do what? To invent a new world. It's not only possible, but we're doing it. Thank you. Bye-bye.